let's talk about the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Now, as everyone's probably aware on the call, there in the Microsoft Business Stack, there are three popular bundle SKUs: your Business Basic, your Business Standard, and your Business Premium, which I'm going to talk about today. Your Business Basic and Business Standard, they're effectively the same, where you've got your online services such as your emails are up in the cloud, your files are up in SharePoint, you've got OneDrive, and you obviously can use Teams. As well. Now, Business Premium, where it differs from the previous two in a major way, is that it now brings that enterprise-grade security into the SMB market. And Gav mentioned it's a hero SKU. I can tell you now that in the last 3 years, Business Premium is by far and away the most popular Microsoft SKU for the SMB market. Now, why? Because it does offer an extremely large amount of value for the price that you're paying and what you get. The Microsoft Security business, I believe, siloed now has roughly about 15,000 security engineers under the security umbrella, working day in, day out on these particular products, as well as looking at thwarting any issues as well from a cybersecurity standpoint. So you're backed by a very, 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 very large team globally as well. Now, we're going to talk about a few things: Intune, Purview, Entra, and Defender, and a little bit on, but less on what they call the Azure Virtual Desktop. With Business Premium, yeah, we talk about the security side of it, but there's also a massive, massive uptake in the cloud environment. So think about your Windows, your local Windows machine, but sitting up in the cloud, where you can access it from anywhere, from any device as well. So that's something you also have the capability with Business Premium. So let's talk a little bit more about some of these other technical features. But before I jump into that, there's also this little slide to give you a very overall value discussion as to what Business Premium does. It's the comprehensive cost effectiveness and the enterprise grade security, like I mentioned as well. So a couple of things in here that I mentioned in the previous slide. You also get all of your M365 apps, Outlook, Word, Excel, Teams, etc. The licensing complexity is all bundled into the one license, so you need to worry about which license you need to get. It's already all bundled into Business Premium, which adds to the cost effectiveness. Instead of buying these individual licenses like a Defender for 365 and a few others, it's already in one SKU at much less of a cost as well. Now, I mentioned enterprise grade security. Now, it is a comprehensive security that is multi-layered. So you'll see things with Business Premium where, say, 365 also is added in as well. One thing with cybersecurity is the multi-layered approach has also always been the ideal approach, where if it gets through gate A, you won't be able to get through gate B and vice versa. So you'll see a bit of that as I roll through as well. Now, Business Premium, there are five distinct pillars that it works within. Identity access controls via what they call Microsoft Entra ID P1. Now, that is effectively your user account. That is your user and your identity. And all the features that come under that, whether it be multi-factor authentication, single sign-on. We'll talk a little bit about conditional access. Intune talks more about what they refer to, another two acronyms, MDM and MAM, so Microsoft Device Manager and Microsoft Application Manager. Now, or mobile device manager and application manager. So what it does is instead it will be able to control everything that happens within your device, whether it be enrolled specifically for your organization or if it's a BYO device as well. Now, Defender for Business, thinking about threat vulnerability management, another acronym I'll talk about real quickly. Defender for 365, that is that you get your spam filtering automatically as a part of having your email within the Microsoft ecosystem. Defender for Office 365 is that next layer above, and I'll talk about that two particular parts of that for you to be aware of. And the Microsoft Purview. Now, Microsoft Purview in the last couple of years has really come to the forefront of a requirement for a lot of businesses, whether it be in enterprise, mid-market, or even the SMB. Microsoft Purview is the engine that safeguards your data. So it is your compliance and governance policy creator for everything that is labeled as data within your organization, whether that be your emails, whether it be through SharePoint, OneDrive, and we'll talk about a little bit more. But the reason it's become very popular is purely on the back of integrating AI into your environment, and is a very essential piece. more than likely we'll do something in more detail around that in other sessions with Cloud Made Simple. Now let's talk about Enter ID. So what we've got here is a challenge, in which case an employee needs to access work data from anywhere. Now, as you can probably, as might imagine, Jay mentioned as well, that your bad actors aren't necessarily coming straight from Australia. There are bad actors globally, and their MO is to get your user identity and get your business IP and ransom you for money. Now, if one big part of being able to ensure they can't get access into that is enabling things such as your multi-factor authentication. And another big one is what they call conditional access, which we lean on quite heavily. Conditional access will determine and define who's coming in, where you're coming in from, what device you're coming in from, what level of security that device is coming from as well, and also what application is coming in from. So if there is, I'm not too sure, Jay mentioned earlier, it was a great example he brought up around iPhones or even your Android device. You keep that up to date because it's very, very front and center for you when there's an update. But what about those applications behind it? Well, not everyone updates all their applications all the time. So say, for example, there's an application that you're trying to use to access some of your work environment data. And you know that there's a critical vulnerability out there with it at the moment. Well, Microsoft does. If you don't, Microsoft is very, very aware of these things. It will flag that application cannot access your environment until it is up to date because there is a secure vulnerability in there at the moment. So that's just one part of it. Now, what you find as I go through some of these other features as well is that they all tie in, they work together very seamlessly, all being a part of the Microsoft system. So the Enter ID talks with Intune, which talks to Purview and everything else as well. So it's all tied in quite nicely. Now, one thing to leave you on this slide as well is that very, very clearly brought out amongst all the research out there is that 99% of identity attacks, so your identity being your usernames and passwords, can be thwarted by enabling multi-factor authentication. You'll find that Business Basic and Business Standard, like I mentioned earlier, they have a very, very basic security level. We can enable MFA, but it's not the conditional MFA that CMS and the team that can enable it with you if you've got Business Premium. So for example, if you're inside your environment and your environment is well known to CMS as well as the Microsoft, you might be asked for multi-factor authentication unless there's an actual reason why. For example, on a device that's never seen before. But if it's your in-charge office environment, it won't ask for MFA. But as soon as you go into a separate device and it's coming from a separate location, so say on a public Wi-Fi at a cafe, Microsoft will prompt you for MFA again because it's not aware of that device and it's not aware where you're coming from. All of these things it learns, as well as policies that can be put in place to ensure that MFA is very, very easy to adapt to and very, very easy to employ. Let's talk very quickly about another system that we've got here, which is around looking at Intune. Now, Microsoft Intune is the crux of a lot of this. So conditional access makes those decisions in the background as to if you can get access into your work environment, but a lot of it is past information from Intune. Now, Intune is where you can define which apps, even on a BYOD device, can access certain things as it passes it and works with the conditional access from Entra. But the other things it can do as well is, I'm sure you're aware of it, is do things like wipe data remotely. So on this example, very quickly, before I go to that part, on this example, it shows that you've got your BYOD device or your mobile. Now, you'll see this is compartmentalized. You've got your managed apps that you access your company information from, and then you've got your personal apps. So you don't want your personal apps to be able to interact with your company data and vice versa, purely around the potential that there's going to be data leakage. So what you can do with Intune is ensure that any application from a BYOD device is only using the application that is in control of and understands. It will not allow data to go from those applications into an application that's on your phone if it's not within those controlled application list, and it will not allow personal apps to be going the other direction into your company information. So that's just one example. Another example of using Intune is that you also have the ability to wipe devices. Just say, for example, this phone that we're talking about got stolen, and we're not too sure where it is. And there's a concern that, they can access company data, and there's got some company data that might be loaded locally via some of those apps. But you have the ability, as soon as it hits the internet, to actually wipe all that business information from that device. That can be on a mobile, could also be on a laptop as well. Now, I won't go further more onto Intune, even though there's probably 500 other use cases for it. But let's jump on to the next one because we're running on time. Let's talk about Defender for Office 365, which also comes with Business Premium. Now, as I mentioned, this is the next layer of from spam filtering that you have the ability to use within Business Premium. There are two main features in there. You've got safe links and safe attachments. Now, safe links and attachments don't just work within your emails; they also work within Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, which means that if there is a malicious link or an attachment that you are aware of within your OneDrive, SharePoint, whatever of those apps, the Defender for 365 will be aware of it and will prevent you from opening it, running it, saving it, or even going to that specific website as well. Again, it's that multi-layered approach, like I mentioned, because you've got similarities with K365 to this one. Now, one thing to note about the safe links and safe attachment is Microsoft looks at it. If it's coming inbound, Microsoft looks at it into what they call a sandbox environment, completely separate from your tenant, and looks at the attachment, opens the attachment, and looks at the links before it even comes into your mailbox. So if it is defined that attachment, that link does hit a certain bad reputation link or attachment, it will be removed before you even see it. So something that you also have the ability to use. Another one that we'll look at as we move forward is looking at Purview. Now, as I mentioned, Purview is, in the last few years, been extremely popular, and it is something that you have access to with Business Premium. So Purview has the ability to label certain documents that is defined by yourself to ensure the protection of it. This will not only for internal but external purposes as well. So just say, for example, there is a spreadsheet that there's a lot of sensitive information on that only the financial team is allowed to view. It could be put in a SharePoint site that may not have the correct permissions. Permissions go from one user to another accidentally. Whatever it may be, they will get access to that spreadsheet. Now, or that site, sorry, that the spreadsheet lives within. But what you can do is apply what they call sensitive labeling. So with a label, if you apply a label to that document saying only, I think it might have been Jenny, I think it was, that used Jay before, sorry, I can't remember the name, but that person has access to that file, and only that person and her colleague, Steve, has access to that file as well. Just say Jenny, she takes that home on a USB key, and that gets stolen or lost. Now that spreadsheet, if it doesn't have that labeling, will be accessible to anyone that has access to that USB. So it's a very common scenario that we'll hear about. If you apply a sensitive label to that document, once you open that file, the only way they get access to it is if they put in the credentials for Jenny or Steve. That is the only way that is possible. Now that is same for internal. If Michael tried to come in and look at that document as well, because he's got access to the SharePoint site, he won't be able to because he doesn't have Jenny's or Steve's credentials. Now, this thwarts not only data leakage or accidental data leakage via the USB example, but it also prevents even hackers from even accessing some of that data as well, even if they came in. Just say, for example, my account got hacked. It wouldn't matter too much for this particular document because I don't have access to it. There are certain principles, what they call just enough access, that the Cloud Map Simple team can take you through, which defines a lot of that. Purview also is the key principle data compliance and governance controller within Microsoft 365. Within Microsoft, with Copilot, Microsoft Copilot has the ability to view and surface all files that the user has access to. If that user has access to, but does not have permissions to view that file, Microsoft Copilot will adhere to those permissions and not give that person permission or the ability to gain information via the AI. So this is part of the reason why it is being very, very highly looked at from a lot of Microsoft companies that have a lot of their data within SharePoint, for example. So yeah,